Hi, Sue Ann. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Sandra. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. I'm looking forward to chatting with you. Obviously, you and I met a little while ago. I've learned some things about you through the things that you do for the organization and the community, but I'd love to learn a bit more today. Would you like to take a few minutes and introduce yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. So, hello, everyone. My name is Sue Ann Hong, and I'm currently the president and CEO for the Center for Asian Pacific American Women. You know what? I'm an immigrant. I came to the United States when I was 8 years old. I flew here by myself. I met my aunt in Chicago by way of Honolulu, LA, and it was really an interesting journey because we ended up at the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, if you can only imagine that journey. And the fact that, I left everything that I knew. And so early on, I knew that the ability to adapt in any environment was really important, especially as the only minority, only person of color in the Upper Peninsula, the small mining town. So I think, my aunt was really kind of a pioneer and showed me what a strong woman looks like because she was single at the time. And, she got graduated for Ewha Women's University and then came to the United States to get her master's and PhD at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So, like, she was already, I think, ahead of her time. I feel like she really set the groundwork for, that role model. And then from there, I've been in, lower part of Michigan, South Carolina, Kansas, back to Michigan, Illinois. And between all of the moves for her job and then from my own career, which we'll talk a little bit later, I think I just really understood the need to observe my surroundings and how do I fit in? What do I do? And how does my identity kind of play into that?
That's amazing. That's amazing. I wish that we all have aunties like that. That she really shaped your life. So, in the role that you have today, you're doing some really amazing things, but you didn't start out there. We all have kind of a catalyst and starting point, as well as these sort of pivotal moments that changes and shape our lives. Can you tell me a little bit about your career in the beginning and how you got yourself into the role that you are today and how you're focusing today?
Yes, absolutely. I was in Portage, Michigan when I was in the middle of the my master's program at Western Michigan University, and then as I was looking, close to graduation, I was looking at all kinds of jobs and opportunities with a business degree. I didn't really know exactly where I wanted to work, so I think when I first saw applied for State Farm insurance companies. I saw this little 3x5 card in the summertime that said hiring for data processing. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. All I knew was that I needed a job. And so when I graduated, or as I was going through the master's program, I applied for this job in data processing. So when I interviewed with State Farm, they came back, hey, we could put you in data processing, accounting, finance, and other places. But I ended up in data processing, an area that I knew nothing about. And this is kind of a general theme in my career. I actually go into these different spaces that I didn't know anything about. And I've done that probably about 5 times. And so I think the key is the learning agility, the ability to really understand how to learn and quickly adapt. As an example, I mean, we had at the time we had to learn how to code in job control language, and I'm like, okay, like, really? I'm a business major, so I had to learn, and understood that that was part of my job is to what do I have to do to get up to speed on these areas that I know nothing about. And then my first management responsibility was after a 1 year uh, management training program. They put me on second shift from a 3 to 11, and being a supervisor for the first time. And I think that was very humbling. Everybody was older than me. I was the only Asian person in the department, and it just really made me realize how little I knew and the fact that I had to depend on all these experts to get my job done. So that was very humbling and just I had a lot of imposter syndrome type of feelings. like I didn't deserve to be there. Plus, I looked very young
Hmm.
at the time. I looked like I was probably in high school. The key thing that I felt was very important was my first supervisor was phenomenal. And I think that really helped me shape about what a leader or a management person's role is. She was very specific. Every week I had a schedule of what I was supposed to do, what I was supposed to learn, who I was supposed to meet with, and then we'd have a follow-up conversation about all those things, and then and she would give me feedback. I think that was the kind of the premise of how I learned to be a leader at the beginning, because I had somebody who was excellent in giving that. And then I was doing my work, and then ultimately there was the first Asian male department head ever that I recall in Marshall, Michigan. He was the first person that came up to me and said, "Hey, what are you still doing here?" And initially I was like, "Well, I'm a little offended. Like, I don't know what that means." But what he meant was, you should have moved along already. You should have, you should have been in your first, there should be a plan for your succession, like how you move through the organization. He was probably a key person that pushed me beyond what I was comfortable to the next level. And he was the one who promoted me to a second line, like a department head leader during transition, which, by the way, I knew nothing about how to do. And I mean nothing.
Yeah.
Transition plans, how to get people ready. Some people will, they weren't going to have a job. So all of these things that I felt like I didn't have any equipped skill sets for, they're like, okay, this is your job and you can tap into your resources. So that was what I call the big, hairy, audacious, type of experience, I think. And that tested me. And I was 27. To go from 65 people in the department, and I had to reduce it to 19 and centralize the entire operation to Dallas.
Wow.
So I think those were the key things early career that shaped me, because I had some very difficult assignments and people put me in spaces where I did not feel equipped to handle it, but I ended up getting a lot of help.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question about that, because when I hear your story of the amazing supervisor who met with you every week to this department leader who came in and said, you need to push yourself and get out of the shell and do more. I'm inspired, and I will say that that's not always the experience that people have. It certainly wasn't mine. I had some great people along the way as well. We don't ever do it alone, I don't think. But those are some phenomenal things that happened to you at a very, very early onset of your career. And it's amazing. Do you think that if someone doesn't have that today in their earlier in their career or even mid-career, would you ask them to sort of reassess that and pivot? What would be your advice to them if they don't have that kind of sponsorship, advocacy, mentorship today?
So the data tells us that's true, because when you look at the McKinsey Lean-In.org study that they do of women in the workplace, there's a reason why 1 in 4 women are in C-suite, 1 in 20 women of color in C-suite, and 1 in 50 AAPI women in C-suite. You have to have enough of a pipeline at the beginning of career, and the broken rung is at beginning of career. And so from the get-go, we don't have the network. We don't get the career advice that a white male may get. We don't get, now I was fortunate to have a vice president who was white male, who told me early on, you're going to have to get out of the general department into a line of business if you want to move up. That's gold. That kind of advice our women are not getting.
Mm-hmm.
And so to your point, then it takes longer for us to get into leadership. We don't even know we can do it or it's an option, because we are looking at every single qualification and we have to put a check mark to
That's right.
every single thing, where, other people are like, oh yeah, 50%, we're good, I'm qualified. We are very tough on ourselves. And
Right.
so I would say that's true for AAPI women. I would say that's true for Black women, Hispanic women, women of color in general, because every woman of color that we have a cohort with the Shiro program that we have, they tell me pretty much the same thing,
Mhm.
right? So there's a commonality, especially at that beginning of career, that they don't have the network and the career advice that's more directive, that
Mhm.
really shows them what they may need to do if they want this over here. If you
Mhm.
want to become a department head, what do you need to do now? If you want to become a, whatever job or role you want, you're going to have to do some things, but guess what? We need to prepare you for that. So I think from that experience, what I learned, like when I was a department head, I would talk to my people whenever they'd have a one-on-one with me. They knew my question, which is, what are you doing to develop yourself now for whatever you want to do in the future? So that was almost like a standard conversation. They knew Sue Ann would ask this.
Mhm.
So you almost have to have people surrounding you. I think that's the reason why we don't have as many young people in leadership roles quicker.
Agreed. Agreed. I'm sure you ran into this in your time of managing all of these people. There are people who response is going to be, I actually don't know where I want to go 5 years from now and two
Yep.
years from now, much less, a year from now.
Yep.
So as a leader and a supervisor, what did you do to bring that out of them and help them cultivate that when they just feel perhaps a little bit lost?
So one of the things that I remember having conversations is like, what do you love about your job?
Mm,
As a question. What do you love to do? Why do you love this? And they would tell me what they would
mhm,
love. And then I would look at the characteristics of those roles and say, are there other opportunities, or can we grow you in this opportunity, but maybe with more responsibility? So
mhm,
that would be one of the ways. So it was kind of a coaching process where you would ask questions and then you'd say, if you were to do this, role, then, here are some other examples. Oh, and maybe we need to set up some type of an experience for you to do a job shadow if we can afford to plan for that and make sure the operations where they need to be, but then maybe we could send you out for like a couple hours to sit with somebody in this area. So I would try to be creative like that. And by the way, I didn't invent that. That's something that I watched and saw emulated. And so I thought, oh, that's great. I love that. And I would do those things like that, and also create some type of maybe a individual development plan where the person can like determine what they would like to work on, but that I'm going to help you either open doors or say,
mhm,
yeah, maybe we need to focus more on this,
mhm.
and give input, take obstacles out of the way, make sure that I give you opportunity. So that I felt like that was my responsibility, to
Yeah.
ensure that that person had every opportunity, but they needed to perform well in their job in the meantime.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I've actually done job rotation for people on my team. And I will say that is something, an amazing thing for them. Not only can you fill the spot temporarily what you need for a couple of months, you give somebody another opportunity to see a different perspective. And when
Yeah.
they go back to their job, even if you don't have a permanent role for them, they've taken away a greater, broader perspective that allows them to do their job even better. So I think it is such an amazing return on investment. Uh,
I would say one more thing. There's a confusion around, I think, the term like high performing people, right? Individuals that are in your area. But there's also high potential. Now, they may be the same, but they may not be the same people.
mhm,
So there's a misnomer, I think, where sometimes people think I have the expertise, I have the seniority, therefore, why does this person who doesn't know as much as me,
mhm.
or this person who's not been here that long, how is it that they're bypassing me for a promotion? So there's more to it than just performing well at that level, because that next level may require something different
Yeah,
in terms of your skill sets, leadership, how you connect the dots, how you are more than just about your individual contribution, but maybe you have to be more outreaching to other people,
right.
work with in a team level. So I always tell people, do not mistake high performance with high potential.
That's a really good distinction you just made because for people who have managed teams for a long time, as I have, that is something that I do think people assume that if I'm performing, at my job to its fullest, that requires some sort of promotion, or that automatically says, hey, now you're high potential, you're moving to another spot. And you said it just incredibly well. The people who are getting promoted are those who can connect the dots, who see the big picture, who
Yeah.
are their contribution is actually much greater than their role and responsibilities today.
And the other thing is there may be one or two specialty roles where an individual contributor who is a very, very, fantastic technical expert, maybe they can achieve that technical level, right?
Hmm.
That's higher. Maybe there's one team leader for a particular expertise. That could be another avenue if you don't want to be in leadership, but the manager has to have that conversation. That's
Yeah.
the key, right? To be able to cultivate those talents and the people that understand marrying their desire for whatever it is that they're
Mhm.
trying to do with what you observe as the leader, and then bringing out that piece. I have, honestly, I've had to learn that over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I love to ask you about leadership and success and how you define that. And in your years, and as you transition from one part to another in your career, has that changed over time in terms of how you might have defined it in your 20s to maybe now? I'd love to hear about it. Tell us what's changed.
Yes. So I look at success from like an institutional perspective and then personal. So
Okay.
there were things that I had to deliver as a department head, for auto total losses, for half the country and all of that. That's one idea of success. But personally, when I could see where I helped someone get to point A to point B, like maybe I helped cultivate their talent, they got promoted, or like I actually helped somebody achieve something that they really wanted because they worked hard for it, or their performance increased, or things like that. It's usually people related
Mm,
that I find very satisfying, which is probably why I ended up here at CAPA. Because sometimes what I realize in large companies, it takes a while if you're doing a large initiative and things like that. It may or may not, be where you can actually see the result. And for me, I think because I have like Relator in my top 5, strengths finder, I like to see some results that are a little quicker, that are related to people. I've got positivity, so I want to, it makes
yeah.
a difference if I can see something positive quicker.
Yeah. Tangibility.
Yes, and so I think that's part of it. Is I remember going to Gallup, and they told me like, have you ever thought about working at like a smaller organization where you can actually have an impact that you like to see based on my strengths?
Hmm.
Ironically, 20 years later, here I am, right? So I think that's part of what I learned, is that I love working for a big organization because you learn how to manage and influence and really understand how to be operating in that sphere. But
Hmm.
then coming to a smaller organization, I feel like I could do more to impact directly. That's how I measure success now, is like, how many of these individuals are able to like break through their barriers, or and to be able to really achieve what they want? Are they applying what they learn? Are they living the whole person life and leadership that we're preaching here? you know that makes me so excited. Like, I love coaching. I love, so those are the things that I find success now. And by the way, at the beginning, financial matters, everybody. I just want to make
Yes.
it clear. Financial matters. Independence is predicated on making money and wealth building and things like that. So I put my time in. I planned, and I probably could have saved more. But my point is, you really want to be able to have those types of practical successes so that you can have choices later about
Absolutely.
what you want to do, how you want to do it, when you
Yeah,
want to do it, and who you want to work with.
exactly. I love that. I want to ask you one follow-up question on this. This is something I've been thinking a lot about. So I grew up mostly in corporate, and I've done some startups, smaller companies, large public companies. And I still feel like just in the last few years, I'm developing more and more my own point of view and my voice, right? I was having a conversation with a friend and I said, when you always report to somebody and you always have somebody to answer to, and your executive or leader always have the last say or their opinions are so valued, there's a strange thing that happens, and I think it happens more to women, and maybe also from a cultural perspective because I am an Asian woman as well, that you kind of lose yourself a little bit in that. You're maybe looking for someone else's voice or point of view, and maybe you diminish your own. And I think when you start to do something for yourself and go into, and you have that choice that you're talking about, you start to find that voice in a different way. You start to really form your own point of view. I just wondered if you went through that. You were clearly a high performer. People were recognizing you even in your 20s, running the department, et cetera, and putting you in an uncomfortable position where you had to find your way. And then as you start to develop that more and more, did you find a time and point where your point of view, your voice got even more solid? And was there a catalyst for that, or was that just sort of an ongoing journey for you?
Yeah, I've had great times in my career where I had that support, and I had other times that was not. So I think it depended on, honestly, who was my boss. And I that last part of the 2-3 years in my career, I struggled.